Okay, we are recording. Welcome. So we're going to talk about .NET Conf. .NET Conf is my favorite .NET conference. There's also like Build, which a lot of people really like. I used to be a huge Build fan. I still really like Build, and I'll watch it. But .NET Conf has, over the past few years, has become my favorite conference for all things related to .NET. So last week was .NET Conf. And it's a virtual conference, and what we're going to talk about today is just a recap of this. So a recap of 3 days of .NET and Microsoft awesomeness. Let's go to the next slide. Hold on, I switched windows. Oh, here we go. Okay, so who am I? I'm Dahln Farnes. As just a shameless disclaimer, I guess. QR codes are awesome. I wrote a QR app a while ago to help me manage QR codes and generate them. So I have filled this presentation with QR codes. Scan them and enjoy. This one goes out to, I think it goes to my GitHub. So, but I got my GitHub, my personal website, and then my LinkedIn out there. For people who are watching, and then here, I work for STG, Software Technology Group. I've been with them for 13-ish years. And my background is in .NET. And I have a big focus over the past little while on Azure. That's where I like to be. So let's carry on. Okay, so with .NET Conf last week, and actually with every .NET Conf over the past few years, it has coincided with the release of the next version of .NET. So we got .NET 9 last week. .NET 9 is the new standard term support, so it expires in May of 2026. We get about a year and a half out of that. .NET 8, which everybody should continue using, or at least be familiar with, because it is the long-term support version, goes through November of 2026, which is longer than .NET 9 gets support. So, but next year we get .NET 10, and .NET 10 will be the next standard term support. Microsoft is on a even odd release. Every even version is the long term, and every odd version is the standard term. So 10 is a nice big round number, so that'll be fun. Yes, Troy.
How do you feel about upgrading to the standard term support? Personally,
Personally, I'm okay switching to it because there are a lot of improvements, and there's a lot of cool things that I want to try using. If somebody, and I also think it depends on the project, though. You know, if they're just like, okay, let's build it, and then we don't want to touch it, then I would say go with the long term, right? I think it really just depends. I have seen projects that are also still on like .NET 6, and some even than that. But I would say if you know you're going to be maintaining a project and you're going to be actively working on it, then yeah, jump up to that standard term support. But if the support cycle is longer, or maybe shorter rather, and you don't know how much you're going to be getting in there, I would maybe stick with the long term. So, and it also, you know, you get packages, security updates, and that stuff at a different cadence as well. So anyway, again, another awesome QR code. Check it out. This will just take you to the download page. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about what happened, what else happened. So, I mean, the big highlight was .NET 9, right? However, I would say there was two main topics that was just the two crowning topics at .NET Conf last week. The first one being .NET Aspire, and the second one being AI. It just feels like every talk that I heard was either .NET Aspire or AI, and sometimes a combination of both, which is not a bad thing, right? So let's talk about, first we're going to talk about .NET Aspire, and then we'll talk about artificial intelligence. And I think the bulk of our time will actually be in this AI space. But if you guys have questions, let's pause and discuss that too, okay? or comments. So .NET Aspire. It's a fairly new framework from Microsoft, but they did actually talk about it last year too. They finally went live with what they with their non-preview version just this past summer. And there was a lot of talk about how it went live, but now how they're still continuing to add more stuff to it. So .NET Aspire is an opinionated framework. And when I first heard that, I was like, opinionated. What does that mean? As they talked about it, they basically said, we have looked at projects, teams, maintenance cycles, release cycles, and we have put together a framework on what we think a project should look like right out of the box. And this is more than just a project template. You know, you can go out to Visual Studio, you can say, create me a new project, boom, you're done, right? This is more than that. You can actually do that too. You can go out and say, create me a new .NET Aspire project, but out of the box, Aspire supports stuff like containers and other tooling. It will give you a lot of extra stuff that you might add in to your applications before you go to production. And again, it's opinionated. This is the people at Microsoft saying, we think this is how you should do it. And as I've played around with a little bit with Aspire months ago and then played around with it over the past week, you can see that they've moved from, at least in my opinion, again, opinionated, in my opinion, they've moved from a just do it only this way approach to a this is the way we think you should do it, but here are some ways to customize it. And so what I want to show is how to actually get started with Aspire. And I want to show some of those different things you get. So we're going to, actually, I'm going to pivot just a little bit. We're going to create a new, let's see, Visual Studio. We want a new, just a brand new window opened up over here. Shoot. Okay. So we're going to create a new project, and we're going to do this .NET Aspire starter kit or starter app. And we're just going to let it keep that name, Aspire App 3, create it there. And we're going to do .NET 9 and just keep this default option of using HTTPS. This takes just a moment to spin up, and it created it over here again. Okay, so let's walk through some of the things that are in this starter app. Again, it's an opinionated framework. Microsoft is saying, we think this is the way you should do it, right? So we get an API, right? Let's, if we open this up, and let me actually make that a little bit bigger. Sorry, is that better? Okay. This is a very basic API, right? It's a template API. They're basically saying, here's a good starting point. We get stuff like OpenAPI, mapping the OpenAPI endpoints, and then using the minimal API framework, it's just creating this weather forecast API endpoint that is going to generate some random weather data, right? It's very basic, and that's it. It doesn't even have a link to a database, right? It's just all random data, okay? And then coming back over here to the Solution Explorer, if we jump all the way down to the bottom, we get our web project. This is just a Blazor app, okay? It's a simple Blazor app. If we open up that program.cs to see how it starts up, it's going to add an HTTP client. It's going to, add the Razor components, and then it's just going to start it up, okay? Now, there's something I want to point out here. I think this line is super cool. Pause to look at something else, and then we'll understand why this is cool. If we come over to this project right here, the app host project, and you'll notice that it's highlighted because it's the startup project. If we look at the startup project, or in the program CS here, this is where it is registering apps that it wants to be, that we want it to be aware of. So we're saying register the API service and give it this name. It actually generates for you these classes. So this class is a project that represents the API service project. This is a class that represents the front end, the Blazor project. And so it adds this project, the API project, it gives it a name, API service, and then it registers the web project. Those tooltips are killing me every time I hover over something. It registers the web app, and then it says with reference to API service and wait for API service. So we're saying, here's our API service. We have a dependency. The front end app has a dependency on this backend service, this API service running. And so we want to make sure that API service is running first before we start up our front end application. And then they have names, right? So now if we jump back over to the program.cs where it's setting everything up for the Blazor app, right here, it's referencing that API service name. So instead of having to come in here, start up your API service and say, oh, it's running on localhost port 7212, and then putting that in here, you're just saying reference this app, which is being run together under the .NET Aspire framework. And you could do something similar too. If we come back over here, you could do something and add like a database service and say, we need to make sure the database is running. And we want to give the database a name, and we want to make the API service dependent upon this database running. It could be a SQL Server, it could be Mongo, it could be something else, right? But then you're giving the server instructions on which services need to be running in order to have a complete application. Okay, so let's run this, and you guys can see those pieces come together. So again, we're just starting this app host project. We're not starting individually the API service and the web service. We're starting them just as one. And when this first build will take just a little bit longer, but not long at all. And should we take bets on which screen it opens up on? Yep, over here. Okay. So this is where we land. Instead of actually just seeing right out of the box our Blazor app, or maybe browsing by default out to like a Swagger UI for our API, it's going to land us right here in this Azure or this Aspire dashboard. And we can see the different services that are running. Now, there's a few things I want to point out here. Right here, the type, these are projects. They could be, another type that I saw during the demos was like containers. You can set this up to work with containers right out of the box. You say, I want this to run in a Docker container, and it will. I'm not going to go through that. We're not going to do any customizing here. I really wanted to show some of the different things they highlighted. A lot of this is stuff they actually rolled out this past summer, but they also had a lot of, there were some other things they talked about that I want to show. So, but I wanted to point that out, that we could have containers running up here. We could put our database in a container, and then say, like I was saying, we could make our API dependent upon a SQL container, and then have it running there. And then the API service won't start up until the database service or the database container is up and running. Over here, we can see that even though we just specified the name of the name of our app, the API, so the Blazor app references API service, which we got our name over here. It's still running on localhost, right? We can stop it. We can go out and view the console logs. And then this right here is actions. Okay, I saw a really cool presentation during the conference where they were talking about actions, where they have made a library that makes the actions extensible. You can create your own actions for this menu to do whatever you want. You could have something that takes you out to view a specific type of log. You could make it so that you could have a really weird restart that maybe it needs to clear the cache a specific way before restarting the application. It could be really goofy, but you have the ability now to create your own custom actions, whatever those actions may be, which I thought was really cool. Now, over here on the left, we've got our console, and we can look at the different resources we have running. So here's our console. This is the same console we see when we are running, here, let's make that a little bigger. There we go. When we're running, just in Visual Studio, or maybe if we're running off of like VS Code and we're using the command line. This is that same console we see when things start up. We switch that over to the front end. Here's the front end app. Okay. Structured logs. So this is the console. Structured logs is going to give you pretty much the same thing, but it's going to format it into individual lines. You can come over and look at the menu and say, oh, I want to copy this, or I want to view more details. Okay. Traces. Let's do the front end app. Nope, there's nothing there right now. And we should use it and then come back here. Metrics. Again, this is a cool one. So you can look at different services that are running. So we could say, show me the .NET assemblies count. Okay, and it's going to create these graphs for you. The duration. Active requests. Okay, no active requests right now, but we could see there was one a couple minutes ago. Okay, now come back over here and let's open up. If we just click on, the web project, that's going to take us out to our web project. We can use the counter, do some click. This is your standard startup template, right, from Blazor. Here's our weather data. This is an API call that generates that goes out to that API and gets that random weather data. So now that we've actually done that, if we come back over and go to, let's just do the console, you can see right here, we've got more stuff in our console now. We can see that it did start up, but then it did a GET request out to API service. Again, we're not using the local host and the port name. We're just saying we referenced this service and we did a GET request for this data. It took that many milliseconds, right? That's your log, right? Now, if we came over to traces, here is this call, 500 milliseconds to do this whole call. We can actually go in and say, show me the details here. What was happening? This is the front end working. This is the back end working, and you can see all of these details come together. There was a really interesting presentation during the conference where they were talking about different teams internally within Microsoft that have actually improved their productivity because now they have all of this tooling right out of the box. The one team that came to mind was the people working on Xbox, is they can actually they've been able to use and leverage a lot of these tools right out of the box, which I think is very cool. So there's one, but before I jump away from this, there's one more thing I want to show, but it's over in Visual Studio. So before I close this, is there any questions or comments? Yes, Quinn.
So there's trace logging, and then there's like the actual open telemetry, like OTel stuff. What's driving these under the hood? Is it all OTel?
I don't actually know. It could be. If we, yeah, that's the one.
I believe it is.
You think it is? Okay.
So they add open telemetry for you as part of the middleware, and I believe it is all.
Thank you, Troy. I was gonna say it might be in here.
Anywhere in your program, actually, like your setup here,
Yeah.
your bootstrapping and all that, I didn't see it. Hotel references, so I got a little confused where all that's coming from.
I mean,
It's in somewhere, I can't remember.
yeah, it could be in. So service defaults. This is another cool project, which I wasn't going to jump into very much, but this is your defaults, given the name, right? It is basically how you want your server to be configured once you whether you're running locally or deployed. You're saying here. Let's just look at it real quick. Oh, there it is. There's our open telemetry. We're having health checks. We have service discovery enabled, right?
I like that resilience number too.
Oh yeah,
I think that's
I was wondering if it
So
was.
is my understanding, Polly's now a first-class citizen of the .NET framework.
That was my understanding as of a couple months ago. Yeah. So
So it seems to me like Aspire is less of a new thing and more just bringing together existing stuff.
Yeah.
That you would normally go out and do separately.
Mhm.
Setting up your startup
Yep.
projects and all that.
Yep. And that comes back to that idea from Microsoft. We're saying it's an opinionated framework. We recognize that everybody is doing this. Let's bring it together, right? So
Cool.
anyway, I think it's very cool. So I'm gonna stop it. But there's one last thing I wanted to show. They now have, if you wanted to deploy this, and you just want to do a right-click deploy, come here, go to publish, and you can publish your app host, which will then pull in those other dependencies, the API project, the web project, and you could push it out to an Azure container app, which is pretty cool. I don't know if this was part of the summer release, but they did actually highlight this as part of the conference last week. So I thought that was really cool. In my opinion, I think they need to add more options. I'm excited to see how this works in like a CI/CD setup, which I haven't been able to find very
Works
much.
really well.
Does it? Okay, cool. No, I'm excited to try it out more, but I've been working on other stuff.
So, you know, I've heard mention that they were going, because right now it's all container. It's all
Yeah.
container.
Mhm.
They were gonna have the ability to do functions and stuff like that.
Yes. Okay, there was, yeah, it's in preview. And there was actually several talks that showed it. It was very cool. They basically said, they're like, this takes the Azure functions runtime that runs on Azure and just drops it into a container for you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's still all containerized.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was very cool. There was a couple presentations on that. So
And for me, I'm curious on cost of how you're doing all of this. If it's, I mean, everything out of the box for you using Aspire versus, okay, I'm just gonna go do my own app service or my own container.
Sure.
Do it manually like I have been. If there's a preview for doing it this opinionated way.
I don't think there's necessarily a set cost. It's going to depend on what you configure your containers at. You know,
Right.
do you want them running all the time? Do you want them running with this many resources? That sort
Yeah,
of stuff.
container apps are really cost effective. There's a lot of ways to set that up. So this will just deploy it into a container apps environment and set up your containers. And you need to go through and say, okay, how big do I want my containers to be? How do I want my scaling to work? I don't know if it has any of that in here where you can specify scale.
I think you can in the service defaults project,
Okay.
but this, I haven't touched Aspire in a while because I was waiting for it to mature a little bit more. So all of this that I'm showing is like stuff last week where I was like, no way, that's awesome, right? So I need to jump into it some more. But they really talked about the service defaults project as this is where you would configure that sort of stuff so that when you deploy it in whatever environment, it's going to say, this is what we need to do. This is the instructions for how to set up the environment. And
So did they go over much over the Azure developer CLI, the ACP?
they talked about it a little bit, but most of the time, at least the sessions I saw, they just stayed in Visual Studio.
It seems to me like they're trying to get you away from having to go into Azure for all of this stuff, that you're doing it more at the code level and declaring it here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
less having to tweak things under the hood in your Azure account.
Yeah.
And AZD makes it really easy to publish all this from manually,
Mhm.
which is what we're using. Pipelines.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so this, before we continue, this link was a really good session that aspirations for .NET Aspire, right? He basically spent an hour talking about what Aspire does not do yet, but what they want it to do. And then he kept throwing disclaimers in there of, just so you know, it doesn't do this yet, and it might not ever do this. But here's our plan. Here's what we want to do. And it was actually a really good talk. So yeah, I feel like it. So, okay. So let's talk then about AI. I really enjoyed a lot of the AI stuff. And I'll be honest, over the past few months, I'm like, sometimes I see AI in the news or on blogs that I follow, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Everybody's doing it, moving on, right? And after last week, I looked at this and I was like, I want to do more of this now. And so they published, and this is actually a screenshot of one of the presentations that I ripped off, so I put it on here because it talked about this Microsoft.extensions.a library that is now available on NuGet. And I can't remember who said it. Basically, somebody said that they had gotten feedback from .NET developers that .NET developers felt like .NET was kind of being forgotten in the AI space. Everybody is like, oh, use this language, use this framework. But where's .NET? And which is funny because Microsoft has so much open AI stuff out on Azure. And then there's like the ML.NET libraries. So now in preview is this Microsoft.extensions.a library. And there was a really good session by Steve Sanderson, which I'm gonna use some of his presentation material to show the stuff that I thought was just really, really cool and really wanted to highlight. This is a blog article that goes out to the dev blog from Microsoft on the introduction of that new library. And so I would recommend, going and checking that out. The library basically is, it simplifies the communication between your app, whatever it may be, and your AI service. So your AI service could be Open API. You could go right out to Open API and use their service. It could be Open API out on, or Open AI out on Azure, or it could be something like Ollama that you host, self-host. Anyway, this library simplifies your ability to communicate with those different services. So let's jump out, and I'm going to close Aspire, and we're going to work in this project. Okay, so before I really jump in, let me just give credit where credit is due. Okay, this so during the conference, Steve Sanderson, which I was telling Troy before we started, is one of my favorite presenters during these conferences. He's a Microsoft employee, and I really enjoy the content that he has presented. So he put together a presentation on this library, and I actually have the link to it in another slide. So you guys, if you wanted, you could go out and watch his entire presentation, and then he took that material and published it as a GitHub repository a couple days later with tutorials and steps on how to go through all of the different things that he had demoed during his presentation. So I want to show one of those, and this is the starting project that he actually provides as part of that, as part of his presentation. So we are going to use his starting point and with credit, use the stuff that he presented, because it was fun to see it. I'll be honest, it was even more nerdy and fun to actually do it myself. So his GitHub repo, which I have the link for, I'll show you guys in a bit, actually has instructions on setting up your AI service. So in this case, we're going to use an Azure Open AI. And when you go through that process and set it up, which we're not going to do because I've already done it and I don't want to drag you guys through the boring stuff, it's going to give you an endpoint, and it's going to give you a key. And I've already set them up as secrets so that they're just available and we're good to go. So you can also see that this project already is using, it already brings in this Microsoft.extensions.ai library. And then there's a few different things we have down here from that. The one I really want to point out is we get this iChat client. You can see right there, it's an interface in that library. And we actually create it right here. Okay, and then we just use it. So he pointed out, Steve Sanderson pointed out in his presentation, that he's doing all of this in a console app right now, and we're going to do it in the same as a console app because it's easy to see the logic and then take that and put it wherever you want it. Put it in an API, put it in a Blazor app, put it somewhere else, put it in a WPF app. But this, or even a Maui app, right? But as a console app, it's a very generic approach. So this is basically this is all of our setup. We get we get our secrets, we set up our link to OpenAI, we create our client that we're going to use to communicate with the AI service, and then we add it and then we create it. Here's our instance of it. Okay, so there are 3 different scenarios I want to use that uses this as a starting point. So the first one should feel somewhat familiar. If you guys have used ChatGPT or Copilot, then this experience should be somewhat familiar with more code. So we could say var response equals await chat client, and that's our chat client from the line above, complete async, and then we say, tell me about volcanoes on Mars. Okay. And then we want to see that output. We're going to do a write, not a write line, response.message. Okay. Oh, shoot. I thought I made it so it would start up on the other window, or the other screen. Okay, so that took a little bit to come back, and that, let's just, appearance. No, not appearance. We want, can you guys see that okay? The text? Okay, we'll just leave it as is then. So coming up at the top, Mars is home to some of the largest volcanoes in the solar system, largely because of its unique geographical features and history. Here are some key factors about Martian volcanoes. Okay, so you noticed it took a little bit. We had a blank screen, and then it came back with everything, right? We got a lot of data here, which is probably factually correct. I don't think we need to spend the time reading it right now. We could go back and watch the recording. Okay, but let's change this up a little bit. Let's, instead of doing a waiting for the entire response, we can do this as a stream. So we can say response stream and get rid of the await. We're going to use that same client, but now we're going to do a complete streaming async, and we'll just keep that same question in there. And we're going to get rid of that line, and we're going to do an await for each var message in response stream console.write message.text. Oops, not. That's what we want, like that. So now I will try and grab that window quickly. Okay. So now we're going to get that response as it's coming back, instead of having to wait we're going to get the response as it's being generated, instead of having to wait for that entire thing to come back, which I thought that was really cool. When I saw this, I was like, okay, that's a really basic example with just a few lines, but it's very familiar. Like, this is what we see when we use ChatGPT or Copilot or something, right? This is the experience that a lot of people are getting as their first introduction into using AI products, is this chat streaming experience. So I thought that was very cool. So let's do something more useful. So let's delete that, and let's use some data. So here is some property listings. So experience the epitome of elegance in this 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home located in an upscale neighborhood of the Homelands, right? A cozy 2-bedroom apartment in the heart of Starside, and another, let's see, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom beach house located in Deep Blue. So if we wanted to take this data, and then we could do this with any data, we're using real estate, right? Let's say we wanted to take this data and is more useful as a developer, as an application. Let's say we want to be able to write queries to say, show me all of the properties that are for sale, and filter out the ones that are for rent. And so we can use AI to do some data classification there. So this is the object that that we're going to use for this, where we can say, give me the listing type. Our listing type is just an enum down here, where it's either for sale, it's for rent, what neighborhoods is it in, how many bedrooms, the price, give us a summary, okay? So to do that, we're going to have a loop that goes through, I'm just going to grab this code. We're going to have a loop that goes through all of these property listings. So just a for each loop through the property listings, and we have our listing text. And then we're just using, again, this is that same method we used a bit ago, that complete async, which is just it's part of that that chat client interface. And then we're giving it a value. This is what we want the output to look like, right? What I thought was really cool about this is not code, this line right here, but we're telling it what we want it to do. We're saying, parse this, extract information from it. You know, we could do a keyword search as just going through looking for, do a keyword, find how many bedrooms there are, try to find how many bedrooms there are, try and find the price, differentiate between the number, which is the price, and the number, which might be part of a street address. We could do that, and it would be a lot of code to do that. But instead, we're writing an English sentence, giving it instructions, saying, extract the information from the following listing, and here's the listing. And it's just going to pass all of that in as a single sentence. And that's actually the bulk of it. The rest of this is just getting the response back and making it into a format that we can read. So if we run this, and it's gonna, there we go. Okay, the first one came back. It's a sale. It's in the Homelands neighborhood. It has a price of $850,000. Here's the amenities. Our elegant family home in an upscale neighborhood with modern amenities. Our summary, right? Here's the next one. Here, it's a rental. It's in Starside. It's a cozy apartment. The last one, deep blue. It's 1.2 million. Stunning beach house with a private deck, right? When I saw this, I was like, that is so cool. There are times when I have wanted to do something that's a very manual process, but something like this could simplify a lot of effort. Something that used to be a manual process could now become automated. There could be, a real estate company out there saying, okay, we need to classify all of our properties. That means we need to have somebody sitting at a desk reading these all day long. This could open up that person for other tasks by using AI. So I just thought this was a really cool example. Because it just comes down to hard data, right? We're taking data in English and we're getting data in JSON, which I like JSON. So I thought that was very cool. Before I do my next example, is there any comments, questions?
Some of those summaries are this.
Well, that's just outrageous.
I think that's amazing. That's
incredible.
I got a lot of things going through my head of how to do this.
Yeah.
It could have been a 6-month project for an average
Right.
team to parse that out.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
And there was another example he did, which I wasn't going to show, but I'll talk about it for a second. He used images of traffic cameras, and he said, "Is traffic congested?" He just asked the question: "Is traffic congested? Is the camera functioning well? Is this a picture of traffic at all?" And it actually did a really good job there too. Like, there's a lot of different things where we can take real world data and real world experiences that traditionally we've only been able to parse as a human, but now we can throw them into an AI service and get a similar output, which I thought was just super cool.
How do they charge for using these APIs?
That's a great question. So actually, I wonder. Okay, so I'm not going to go find it right now because I don't want to go too off the rails, but I did look it up. They charge by a token, and I was like, "What the heck's a token?" And a token is a chunk of data, right? And I found one spot. I can't remember if it was out of OpenAI or at Microsoft, but they basically said a token could be summarized as about 4 characters worth of text. And they charge, depending on the AI service you're using, it's, it could be a couple dollars, it could be really expensive, or it could be fractions of a penny. So we're actually using, in this example, we're using GPT-4o Mini. And I actually found it to be a very affordable option. From Microsoft, from Azure OpenAI, it was fractions of a penny per token. From OpenAI, so like ChatGPT, OpenAI, right? Theirs was actually even cheaper, like fractions of fractions.
You could use that.
You could, yeah. I haven't done it here, but I actually kind of want to try it.
But you could use on-prem.
You could. So like Olama, right? So Steve Sanderson, in his example, he actually referenced Olama at one point. He's like, I'm running Olama. Let's use Olama here, but let's use Azure OpenAI over here. And he kept switching back and forth. And I actually considered using the Olama version, but he says right there in his documentation, he's like, if you don't have a pretty good GPU, then it's going to take forever. And I'm like, I don't want to light my laptop on fire. So that's why I'm using this one. But it's actually surprisingly affordable. I've had this service running. I put together these demos over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and I've actually had the service running nonstop 24/7 since then. And I think I've used like $2, and I think I've used about 60,000 tokens as I've passed data back and forth. So, and I'll actually talk about the tokens a little bit more in my next demo. But that's a great question, because I think that's something, price is something that prohibits a lot of companies from actually wanting to jump into AI, because it can be expensive. But I was boring my wife with this last night. I'm like, I think, and this is just technology according to me, I think that over the next 5 years or so, we're going to see all of this become so affordable, and maybe not 5, we'll see. I think it'll become so affordable that people will start to ask the questions, why aren't we using AI? Because price is no longer a valid excuse, because it can do so much in such an affordable way. So, and I looked up the prices because I was concerned that I was going to be spending a lot of money running this 24/7. I was like, oh, do I need to shut it down? And I was like, nope, I don't, because it's actually not using any money unless I'm throwing tokens at it. So yeah, great question. Okay, so for the next example, we're going to clear all that out and start over. So this one I thought was a really cool example too. Let's say, and to kind of lay the groundwork, let's say we've got a website where we want to have an immersive shopping experience, and we want the website or the app, whatever the medium is, to basically nag you and say, hey, have you considered buying this? So what we're going to do is put this code in. So this is a chat role. Okay, we've created a list of messages, and then we're initializing our list with a role. And we're saying, answer any question, but continually try to advertise Foot Monster brand socks. They're on sale. Okay. I thought this was cool. This next little bit of code is just a chat loop. Okay. So while true, so we're not going to stop it. We're just going to let it run and run and run until we're sick of it. Excuse me. Okay. So our text, which we're going to write, is going to be white. We're going to label it with the U. We're going to read the input, and then we're going to take that input and we're going to add it to our messages list up here. When a response comes back, so here again is that same method we've used for all of our other examples. We're just using complete async. We could use complete async or complete stream, right? And we could just pass it in there. We pass all of the messages. And that's an interesting thing. I'll show this. I'll come back to that fact right there that we're passing all the messages. We get the response back, and we add that response to our messages back up here. Those responses are going to come back in green. Okay? So let's just see what this gives us. Okay. Hello. Hello, can I assist you today? By the way, have you checked out Foot Monster brand socks? They're currently on sale and perfect for keeping your feet cozy and stylish. Okay, that's great. Tell me about volcanoes on Mars. Mars is home to some of the largest volcanoes, yada, yada, yada. Okay, while you're exploring the wonders of Mars, don't forget to take care of your feet with some comfy socks. Right? Foot Monster brand socks are on sale now and perfect for those long adventures. Okay. So it's doing exactly what we told it. Let me just drag this down. answer any question, but continually try to advertise Foot Monster brand socks. Okay, let's give in a little bit and say, okay, I want some socks. That's great. You'll love the comfort and style, the design. Okay, it's still trying to sell them, kind of. It's just pitching features, right? It's kind of an idiot. All right. Okay. Let's buy some. How much are they? Great choice. They're very affordable. Usually you find them in the range to $10 to $20 per pair. It's just making stuff up now. Okay. But it is still conversational. Okay. So let's give it some context. Okay. Let's do this. So we're going to keep our role in there, that very first initial instruction that we're giving it, but we're going to give it now a method which it can use to calculate the cost of a pair of socks. All right, we've given it a description so that this is the instructions on how it knows what we're doing here. It doesn't actually, this is the instructions that it gets, okay? The number of pairs of socks to calculate the price for. So we pass in the number of socks, and then the output of this method is count times the price. You could make this not static, right? It could go to a database. We could link this to a database and have it much more dynamic. But this is what we're going to do for now. So then we give it a price. Great. Now we're going to make the chat aware of that method. So it can use this method. We're going to say, here's our AI function factory, create get price. And we're just going to give it that get price method. And then we create our new chat options. Now to adjust that, we're going to come down to our complete async, where we're passing the data to our OpenAI service. And we're going to say chat options. Okay. So let's run that. Hello. Okay, you'll notice no context here, right? We've started completely over. New conversation. All of our stuff about Mars is gone, and we don't need to go back there. But it's just right off the bat. Hey, do you want to buy some socks? Okay. How much is one pair of socks? Okay, it came back with a blank result, right? Now let me show you guys why. We have told it, we've made our method, we've registered we created the options, and we've even passed those options in there. But we haven't actually given this chat bot the ability to use those functions, which I could see them maybe wanting to say, okay, if we're passing in the options, just by default, give it the ability, right? But what we need to do is come clear up here to the top, and we got to stop this. And we're going to, right here, we're going to say use function invocation. So this is giving our chat client the ability to invoke those functions. So now, let's try it again. Hey. Hello, how can I assist you? Okay, I need a pair of socks. Let's say one pair of socks. Let's do that. Price of one pair of socks is $15.99. If you're looking for quality and style, you can't go wrong, which that's pretty cool. So how much is 100 pairs of socks? 100 pairs of socks is $1,599. If you're considering a bulk purchase, you should definitely check out Foot Monster brand socks. They're not only high quality, but currently on sale. It continues to push that, right? While it's useful, it's also a bit of an idiot. So, but okay, so let's try this. I want to buy them. Help me check out. That's great to hear. While I can't process the payment directly, I recommend visiting the Foot Monster website. Okay, so let's pause there, and let's give this let's give this another ability. So let's give it a shopping cart, somewhere where we can hold that data and use it, whether it's going to stay inside the bot or maybe we bring in another part of the application, right? So here is an object that's going to represent our cart. Okay, we've got our number of pairs of socks. We've got add socks to cart, and we're going to, anytime we add the number of socks to the cart, we're just going to increment what we already have with what we're adding. And then we're going to give a little bit of output, put in, let's output how many pairs of socks we're buying. And then we've got our get price method. That's the same as the one we created up above. We're going to make it as part of the cart now. So we are going to come up here. We're going to get rid of this and replace it with, oh, there it is, this snippet. Okay, so we create an instance of our cart, and then here's our get price, which we're already using, but now we're referencing that one that's in the cart object. And then here's our add socks to cart function, which is in the cart object. We add both of them to the chat options library, or the chat options object, and then we're going to keep that same reference right here. Nothing needs to change right there. Okay, so let's start this up. Excuse me while I drink water. Okay. Howdy. Howdy. How can I help you today? By the way, have you checked out the amazing Foot Monster brand socks? They're currently on sale. I'm planning a trip to Mars to see the volcanoes. I need 14 pairs. Actually, let's do this because we're going to do 12 pairs of socks. Added 12 pairs of socks to your cart. The total now is 12 pairs. Sounds like an exciting trip to Mars. The total price of 12 pairs of socks is $191.81. That word wrap is not wrapping. $191.88. I've added them to your cart. Okay. Wait. Yeah, we could try that. And I've never actually tried half. So let's see what it does. I need 1.5 more pairs of socks. Let's see what that does. No, 2 pairs added. So it rounded up. Great choice. I've added 2 more pairs, and it doesn't even actually reference the fact that we tried to add a partial set. I like it.
For the additional.
So the additional is now $31.98. What is the total cost of my cart? Total cost is now $223.86. Okay, can I give you my credit card? Sorry, I can't process credit card information directly, which is, we should expect that. It didn't know the price, and so it started making up stuff. It told us earlier that it couldn't actually help us with the transaction, but now it does have the ability to, one, look up the price and add stuff to the cart. Now, this is where we would take it another step further if we wanted, which we're not going to, but we could take it one more step further and actually bump them over to a checkout process at this point. So, yes. Ooh, okay. You're going to laugh, but
I'm trying to be legal.
I ran this app through my wife the other day, and she was like asking it the weirdest questions. I was like, what's wrong with you? Why are you treating my app this way? And it actually did a pretty good job.
Someone try to
Yeah.
trick it into the replan for socks that are never.
Yeah. Do you have socks for cats? They're amazing socks for humans. It doesn't seem like they have socks specifically designed for cats. Do you have, actually here, let's leave that in there. Have, with a typo, have cat patterns on the socks. A variety of fun, stylish patterns, and it's quite possibly they have some cat themed designs. It's starting to make stuff up again, but we could make it aware of that, right? With some of those function calls, giving, which I think
This
is
is where
pretty
you put a database call.
Yeah.
into Inventory.
Yeah.
Database.
And you could have that inventory created by parsing AI at parsing sentences of your descriptions or something too, which I think is pretty cool.
Amazing how context specific it is with your code.
Yeah.
You're not searching the internet. It's
Yeah.
now linked to your code base.
Oh yeah. Okay. So that was something I wanted to point out. One of the reasons we have context in this conversation is that we are actually passing the entire message conversation every single time, which that's going to get more expensive.
You have to pay for those tokens.
You have to pay for this.
every time.
Yeah. So while it was less expensive when I just said howdy, now we're passing all of this. And then for the next message, we're passing all of it, so it's going to get progressively more expensive. I think, I'm not sure, but I think there is actually a way to just to have some context there, but I've not looked into it. So yeah. Jen, were you going to say something? Okay. I don't know.
Well, you can really tailor this to what your use case is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very specific. Like Alexa is very, very broad. You could actually just focus this on exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Or
So I've seen, I don't know if you guys have seen on the Amazon app lately, but if you go and read reviews, the very first review is a paragraph that says customers feel like it has, that the socks are soft and that they're comfortable and that they're durable. But that's not something that anybody's typed up. I think it actually has a little badge by it that says generated by AI. And so there's a lot of different circumstances where, we've been collecting data for decades. We could start putting that into AI and benefit from it. So any other questions, thoughts? Okay, let me just, we're going to wrap this up. Let me just, yes.
You start from scratch.
Mhm.
You
There is a little bit of randomness. For example, so if we,
That was on the original volcano up there.
Yeah.
Not sure if it was my imagination. That's not sure.
it was a little bit, so like if I just say hello, hello, how can I assist you today? By the way, have you checked out Foot Monster socks? Okay, now let's stop it and just give it the exact same. That looks the same to me, actually. Yeah. But I do think in some cases there is some randomness, but it probably depends on what you're trying to do too. We are seeding this with those instructions to say, try to sell socks, right? So I think it depends, but in general, I think some randomness, some not. So let me just jump back over here for a second. Okay, so this YouTube, the one on the left, is a link to Steve Sanderson's presentation where he went through a whole bunch of these examples, including the one we just did. So he has the one though where about the images. He has one where he does a quiz where it actually uses a Blazor app and is quizzing you on .NET related topics, which I passed all 5 questions. And then this is in the GitHub repository that is associated with his YouTube video, his presentation. So both are really great. Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, well, thank you guys for coming and online. Thank you.
So are you going to go and start doing that now?
Totally. Actually,